So some of the organizations, usually organizations notch, many of the organizations tattoo the dogs on the underside with the date that they sterilized the dog. And here's Chutki. Chutki is a very interesting story. Chutki, by the way, means little one, and many of these dogs have names. The various people like Vimal and Parveen, they give the dogs, they personify the dogs. It's as if they're their pet, just the same way with the colony of feral cats that we tend and care for, although we had them, and we had spayed and neutered. Each of them have names. Well, so it is with these people. Chutki was found, obviously an abandoned dog, as a puppy, a very young puppy, and she was being attacked by the other Lodi Garden dogs. They weren't going to allow this puppy into their territory, and she was going to be mauled. What the people did, they couldn't catch Chutki. She was so afraid, and she had no hair on her. So what they did is they got Durmectin, which is an ivermectin-like medication. They put it on the biscuits, and they kept giving it to her. They come morning and night, so they did it twice a day until they won her over, and then they caught her and had her spayed and neutered. And this is one gorgeous dog, and so sweet. That's what's so amazing about these Lodi Garden dogs, is they are the sweetest dogs that you could ever, I mean, they would be adopted in no time if they were at Marin Humane Society. You'll also notice that she has a collar on. The people of the Lodi Garden, and it's a handful of them, and they do this surreptitiously because it's against the law. It's officially against the law for them to be feeding these dogs, tending to these dogs. So they wouldn't even talk to me until I told them I was from Marin Humane Society, I rescue dogs, I do this, I do that. And then they opened up and we had these conversations. They put these collars on as a way of identifying the dogs. But sometimes people take the collars off or they fall off, but they try to keep their dogs identified. What they also said is that most of these dogs are abandoned dogs. If you noticed, I said there's the United Nations, there's the World Bank, there's UNICEF, you have a lot of foreigners working in this area. You also have many embassies. And what they think is that these, rather than being the feral dogs of the slums of India, who actually, you'll see, have a different look, that many of them are abandoned dogs. And they're quite frightened. So this is Zorro. Zorro was one of my favorites, very sweet. And Zorro usually tended to hang out with people. What's noticeable is that the people never petted him. I was watching them. They didn't relate to Zorro. He's, very nice. He's staying there, but they ignore him. Here we have Kumar in early one morning. The man in blue going like this is learning a new technique. He has been feeding these dogs for 25 years. 25 years, and he's never adopted one of them. And Zorro is one of his favorites. Every day, Zorro is there for him, and he's there for Zorro. He's had, as I mentioned, a Cocker Spaniel, a Labrador. Golden Retrievers are also, I found, very popular among the Indians, as here. But never once did it cross his mind that he could take Zorro home. He also told me about Kodak, and Kodak is another abandoned dog. They can distinguish between the feral dogs who happen to come to the Lodi Gardens and the abandoned dog. And here's Kodak with her friend. And these are, now we're going to see some other pictures of the dogs that I managed to track down in the Lodi Garden. Here, obviously, a lab mix. Can somebody tell me what this was? A brindle, not at all like any of the Indian dogs we're going to see. And this one I particularly liked. Now here, we're going back to the dog we saw at the very beginning, because I told you about territory and how these dogs have established their territory. Most of the dogs hang out in 2s and 3s. That group we saw in the beginning, the 5 or 6, is very rare. It's usually like Scruffy and Chutki. Scruffy, who's guarding his territory, he has taken care of Chutki her entire life, ever since they rescued her and overcame her being attacked by dogs. They're inseparable, like Kodak and Kodak's friend. But here, this is the dog who first greeted us. He stays at the entrance by the India International Center and the UN headquarters. They both meet up at one of the entrances. There are about 5 or 6 entrances to the Lodi Garden. And he's positioned himself there. And this dog, they weren't having a standoff. This was a dog having a standoff with another dog, telling them, don't come near my territory. And they'll even run across fields to keep the dogs away from their territory. But I did catch him warning off another dog. They don't do this to people. They're very gentle with people. They actually avoid people except for the people who feed them. So settling in for the day, 6:30 to 8:30. If you're there at 9:30, you will hardly see a dog. And this is about it, if you find a dog. As I said, people ignore the dogs just as close as they can get, but some of them are, most of the Lodi dogs are in good shape. Here was one who must be recent, because this one was all marred. And like the overwhelming sense of beggars in India, everywhere you go, even in the rich areas of the Lodi Garden, beggars in the streets. So you have the dogs looking for their handouts in the Lodi Garden. And this dog, see, it's got the collar, it's got the curled tail, which means it's probably an in-dog mix, and it came upon this black Labrador. And this dog was in terrible shape. And I asked Kumar about it. This was a new arrival. He wouldn't let anyone near him yet, and they don't trap the dogs. They don't come with a noose. The only time someone comes with a noose is if there's a rabid dog. That's when the Indian government comes in. And actually in February, there was a rabid dog loose in the Lodi Garden and who bit people. And at that time, there was a hue and cry to eliminate all the dogs from the Lodi Garden. And the animal rights people stood their ground, and you still have the dogs of the Lodi Garden. So this dog, I particularly, having rescued myself a black lab street dog, my heart went out to him. And over the course of time, I got him to take treats from me. They're not attempting to do it. And as you can see, he's bleeding from the penis. They know that. I talked to the people there. They know it. But because he's a black dog, and as Kumar said, black dogs sap you of energy, the attempt to save this new arrival, I don't think is going to take place, like all the effort that went into saving Chutki, saving Scruffy, saving Kodak, etc. And this is a heartfelt, loving black lab who was frightened. This was obviously somebody's dog. So let's now go a half mile from the Lodi Garden, because I said we're going to look at a small part of the urban situation. And this is the Khan Market, upscale. I mean upscale as far as Indian markets go. It's not Connaught Place, but this is your neighborhood market. And what we found there is that attached to every food store, there's a dog hanging out. Now the dogs weren't owned by the people. These dogs, because there was the food, and food gets thrown out. Now you're going to see this dog over a few days. You notice the flowers. This is the same market another day. The man next door is doing his work. The dog is still placed there, waiting for its handout, and it's not starving, you can see. Another place at the Khan Market, another dog. The dog has a bad skin condition, in terrible shape. This man is there with his dachshund. He notices it, he goes on, life goes on as usual, and there were crowds of people just walking by the dog. Just walking by the dog, the same way people, they become inured to beggars in the street. And this was this dog.